Here's a headline that you don't see often. NRA calls for more regulation after Vegas shooting. What? I don't understand. What I'm at a loss. I don't know how that happened. Goodness gracious. Okay, well, let me give you the specifics. The National Rifle Association said on Thursday, devices that allow semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic ones need tougher regulation. And it called on regulators to determine whether the bump stock devices comply with federal law. The National Rifle Association is calling on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to immediately review whether these devices comply with federal law. The powerful gun lobby said in a statement, the NRA believes that devices designed to allow semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic rifles should be subject to additional regulations, it said. Okay, so first things first, good. Good. I'm happy that they said this. But here's the curious part of this, and I haven't seen anybody bring this up. Certainly not in the mainstream media. If the NRA is willing to concede this, how did they not just undercut the argument that they make after every mass shooting when they don't call for more regulation? So what they say is, look, man, of course we sympathize with the victims. Who doesn't sympathize with the victims? It's horrendous. But the way to stop this is for everybody to be armed, because the only way you stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And if there's a bad guy with a gun doing bad things, well, then you just need a good guy with a gun there to stop him. So by this logic, everybody should be armed because there's more good people than bad people. And what, do you want the good people to be outmatched with their firepower? Whatever guns the bad people have, the good people should have. And if you ban these devices, well, then only law-abiding citizens are going to listen to you. Only law-abiding citizens are going to not use these devices anymore. So now you've made it so that criminals still have these devices that make semi-automatic weapons fully automatic weapons, and now you've made it so regular people who abide by the law are sitting ducks. What, wouldn't you want good people to have the same firepower as the bad people? So why would you pass a law that criminals aren't going to follow anyway and make it so that criminals are the ones who have fully automatic weapons and good people do not? This is the argument they make. They make these arguments. Only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. There's more good people than bad people, so if you arm everybody, then a bad person starts shooting people up, and there's a good guy with a gun there to stop the bad person. You just undercut every argument you made in that front. Seriously, you hear from gun advocates, especially when it comes to the government. They go, any gun the government have is something we should have, because the whole idea is to stop tyranny. So we need to have the firepower to overthrow the government if need be. That's the whole point of the Second Amendment. So we have to have everything that the government has. It should be legal for us to have any kind of firepower the government has. Well, okay, by that logic, you should be able to have, anti-aircraft guns and missiles. You should be able to have chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, So I'm happy they did this, but they have to understand they just undercut their entire argument, because their argument was, hey, any regulation is a bad idea because then you're handicapping the good people. But by the way, they're so right to undercut that argument because it's ridiculous. To make the point that, hey, if you pass a law, only law-abiding citizens are going to follow it, and the criminals aren't going to follow it, so why pass the law in the first place? Well, apply that logic to any law. Here you are with your fancy schmancy anti-murder laws, but obviously only good people are going to follow it, so the bad people aren't going to stop murdering, so why pass the law in the first place? What? Nobody would make that argument because it sounds ridiculous. But then why do people make that argument when it comes to guns? Like, oh, you want to ban, like, fully automatic weapons? Well, only the criminals only the good people are going to follow it. The criminals are still going to use them. So why pass the law? Well, you pass the law because people shouldn't have, fully automatic weapons. And even if it doesn't stop every single person from having, every single bad guy from getting a fully automatic weapon, it'll stop some. It'll stop many. And this is the point, man. When you look at statistics as opposed to anecdotal cases, that's the last refuge of the full-on gun supporter, the gun anarchist, if you will. They go, well, come on, the situation in Las Vegas wouldn't have been prevented because some of the guns he had were illegal. So if some of the guns he had were illegal, it's not like making guns more illegal or something would have fixed the problem. Well, guess what? That's correct. If you have somebody like that and they break the law anyway, well, in that particular instance, yes, maybe it wouldn't have been able to be prevented. Maybe it wouldn't have. But on the flip side, if you had efficient, reasonable gun legislation, at the end of the year, would we really have 33,000 deaths due to guns? The answer is no. Now, how do I know that? Because you look at the countries that have the laws we're describing, and they have like 100 gun deaths or less. So in other words, yes, it's not foolproof. Some of the criminals are going to get the guns anyway and do the crimes. That's a guarantee. But you're going to cut the number of people that are able to do that tremendously. So even if it's in the U.S., let's say it's a 50% cut in homicides. Right now we have about, 11,000 homicides per year with guns. Other modern nations have like 100 or less, okay? So if we have some reasonable gun legislation here, let's say you take that 11,000 number and you make it 5,500 homicides per year. You just saved 5,500 lives! So there's a point to be made about statistics and about how you deter some people. You make it more difficult to get a gun, and some people might not be able to get those particular kinds of guns. Some will, which is why you can't say, hey, this would dissuade this particular shooter, but it would deter many, and it would stop many, and that's the whole point of looking at macro statistics as opposed to obsessing over anecdotal individual cases, which they think makes an ironclad argument, but of course it doesn't. So, I don't know, am I being clear enough about this? And let me go on the record for the 9,000th time. I'm not in favor of banning guns. I'm not. And, maybe some people in my audience would be mad at me for not being in favor of something like that. But my view on guns is the same as my view on drugs, which is legal, taxed, and regulated. So in other words, if you're a law-abiding citizen and you want to have a gun, by all means, if there's nothing in your background, by all means, go right ahead. But they should be regulated. You shouldn't be able to get any kind of gun. You shouldn't be able to get any kind of device to attach to it, like in this case, to make a semi-automatic, a fully automatic. You shouldn't, that should be obvious. That if you're in favor, think about it in an international sense. If you're somebody on the right and you say, well, of course I don't want North Korea getting a nuke, or I don't want Iran getting a nuke or something. Okay, well, you just bought into the logic of gun control. Because what you're saying is, yeah, there are some people who I think are irrational actors who wouldn't be able to handle that. Well, then why wouldn't it be the same for here at home? When there's that guy's a paranoid schizophrenic, that guy's a psychopath, that guy's a jihadist, that guy's a neo-Nazi. Why wouldn't it be, hey, man, we should try to do what we can within reason to allow good people to have guns, but take certain guns away from bad people and, try to craft laws that are nuanced, that are reasonable, in that there's a registration process and there's a permit process and there's maybe a class or something, and you can't have high-capacity magazines and you can't have certain kinds of weapons, certain kinds of devices to add on to the weapons. It's not a lot to ask for mild regulation like universal background checks and high-capacity magazine bans. So, yes, that's the answer. And the NRA just bought into that logic right here. The logic of, well, of course some regulations make sense. I am a free speech absolutist. The First Amendment, freedom of speech. But that doesn't mean you get to make direct threats of violence to somebody. That's still decidedly against the law, and the Supreme Court has approved that. And the Supreme Court has said, yes, of course, we believe in free speech, but you can't make direct threats of violence against people. Of course you can't. You know, you can't do libel, you can't do slander. So we have free speech, and we're very free in that respect, but there are some lines and regulations. Well, same with guns. So they just bought into that logic. The NRA just bought into that logic. That, yes, there's some things here and there we can do. Okay, well, thank you. So then now, at least let's be intellectually honest, and let's say the discussion is, where do we draw the line? So it's a disingenuous argument to say there is no line, because we know that's not true. You don't believe regular people should be able to have nuclear weapons or biological weapons or chemical weapons or anti-aircraft guns or whatever, RPGs. So you agree there is a line, then the question becomes, where is the line? Enough with this disingenuous bullshit of, no, my position is there is no line. Well, that's what the NRA said all this time, and now they said, no, okay, there is a line, but it's just a matter of where is it. Great, so let's have that conversation. And guess what? My side's going to win in that conversation. Why? Because of the polls. Over 90% say universal background check. Over 50% say ban on high-capacity magazines. Majority of Democrats, independents, and Republicans agree to those forms of gun control. Even most NRA members agree to that. But the leadership usually doesn't agree to that because they take money from the gun manufacturers who want no rules. Well, guess what? It turns out that whatever this add-on device is that turns a semi-automatic into a fully automatic, looks like they didn't pay their bribe to the NRA. Because if they did pay their bribe to the NRA, you bet your bottom dollar they'd be out there saying, oh, we can't regulate these. No, these we still need to allow because, you know, you want to take away this device from the good guys only? Because only the good guys are going to follow the law. The bad guys are still going to have these devices, so why ban them? That's the way the system works. The NRA leadership does the bidding of the gun manufacturers. Apparently, the people who make this product, which turns a semi-automatic into a fully automatic, didn't pay their bribes.